Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And to end out 2016, we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to be talking about the debut album of Shane the Crane called STC. You know, it's almost poetic that we end out 2016 like this. Not with a huge smash hit that's dominating the Billboard 200, not with a critically beloved indie darling project, but an album from one of you guys, one of my supporters on Patreon. I sincerely hope you stick around now that your album has inched its way up the schedule organically to land in front of me, especially considering the kid gloves have never been on here. Just a friendly warning, I'm treating this with the same critical intent I treat everything else, as I've clearly warned a number of times. But hey, I'm happy you've been supporting thus far, and now you finally get a chance for me to review that project. So, Shane the Crane, for everyone else, he's an electronic music producer that you'd most likely find on SoundCloud. But unlike a lot of those guys just starting up, he appears to have the backing of a record label, Beat Deck Records. And from what I can tell, this does not appear to be a vanity label. It actually has a couple artists signed to it. Now, from the few blurbs I found, it looked to be skirting the edges of modern popular trends in electronic music with a slightly weirder twist on top. So, okay, that's interesting. I'm kind of on board. So, I took a look at his debut project, STC. How is it? Well, honestly, it's a little bit tough for me to say. I'm definitely not going to say that STC is bad. In fact, and I know this will sound cynical as all hell, but it did exceed a lot of my expectations. It's very listenable, and I can definitely see an environment where this sort of music will do quite well. But all that being said, this is one of those cases where I came to electronic music in a way that I'm not sure most people did, and that my primary exposure came from either what we hear in the mainstream or some really weird avant-garde experimental projects. Now, this arguably sits in the middle between those, and as such it hits a bit of a weird note for me. Not quite as catchy as I'd normally evaluate EDM in the mainstream, but not quite experimental enough that I'm encountering sounds and styles that I've never heard before, which means I'm not sure it's got a high replay value for me if nobody else. Oh, for sure it's decent, but I'm not sure how often I will have an opportunity to come back to this. So okay, what exactly is this project? Basically, we got 9 songs that crisscross a couple different subgenres of electronic music. You have primarily ambient or down-tempo pieces, like the echoing darkness of depression with the slow, sandy percussion or the clicking of the muted pianos on Waiting for STC that eventually breaks into a popping sound, flattened hi-hat effects, and a chiptune-esque noise that I really couldn't stand. All the way to the birth of STC, which is a simple but melancholic piano composition with hints of strings and thin shifts in the mix that actually is pretty beautiful, even as it gives way to waves of a sharper, glossier synths. Now, one thing that is consistent, though, are the very sparse feeling arrangements. Even with instrumentation that feels more organic added, like the textured percussion on Her Orion, or the clipping, choppy strums of the guitar on Arabic Hippies, that bass kick is nearly always at the front of the mix driving the momentum, and nothing else here feels wasted or otherwise here if it doesn't need to be. Of course, this can be a very mixed blessing, especially when it comes to some of the tonal choices, because when this record slips towards material that's less organic or more trap flavored, or even just sound effects I don't like, there's absolutely nothing to distract from it, and that can be a problem. For instance, while I don't mind some of the drippier effects that pepper this record on a song like Goo, and yeah, I do understand why that baby noise fit, those squealing pieces that ascend up the scale against the snares and stuttering nursery Bach twinkles just didn't click for me at all on an otherwise pretty solid piece. It's the similar case for bubblegum pop music, which literally features as a foundation a set of popping noises and a flat vocal sample that just didn't evolve or shift enough in its tone to really connect for me. Culture Club had something similar with its distorted popping vocal samples that are then shifted up and down the scale, but that song also highlights that some of the more interesting organic percussion and other elements don't exactly have pickups with a lot of depth. It feels kind of thin, doesn't quite mesh in with the rest of the mix. But then again, if we're looking for a characteristic of this project, it would be how disconnected a lot of these instrumental ideas feel. With the exception of some of the flattened pickups and a few moments where the mix depth can kind of deceive you otherwise, many of these sounds or progressions sit adjacent to each other in the mix but don't quite interact with each other or blur together in a way that suggests a lot of cohesion. And again, that's a blessing or a curse depending on how you look at it. If you like the tones or progressions, you can ride off that harder bass kick, you're gonna like this. But when you get a song like D220 with that honking vocal sample that plays off a rubbery block of trap percussion with that heavy clap, it really got on my nerves in record time, especially when the most changes that occur within the mix are changes in tempo and rhythm, not precisely melody, which doesn't exactly help these songs stick in your brain. Now that leads to another issue, and that is that these songs don't quite evolve as well as they could. There are change-ups, but outside the birth of STC, they don't really build to a crescendo, a more extensive progression, which doesn't really help these songs feel more fleshed out, or build more of a sense of unique identity for Shane the Crane. That's arguably the element that holds STC back the most. A lot of these pieces feel like solitary ideas, but little in the compositions that will help flow into full-length songs that have a unique instrumental identity. Yes, in tonal choice you get a series of popping noises and squawking noises that, yeah, really aren't my thing, but you need more than just tones to flesh out who you are as an electronic artist. Like, I might not like some of these tones, but you need more if you want to be recognizable. Or let me put it another way. I can see why some critics have called this more of an EP than an album, because EPs are often intended to get out a stream of ideas or B-sides without really requiring the fully fleshed out compositions that would comprise a bigger piece. And considering how short a lot of this project is in terms of its song lengths, and overall really, it's about 33 minutes, it often feels like an EP. And hey, let me stress this, some of these ideas do have promise. The blends of more organic tones with the sharper beats, that they do have some swing to them, and with a fuller instrumental pickup, I can see there being potential, even if it's not fully blended, to emphasize some of that clash. But I also think I'm probably not the best audience for a project like this, probably not the best critic to be covering it either. And so while I'm giving it a very light 6 out of 10, I encourage more electronically minded fans and fellow critics to give this a look regardless. It's a very sparse project, but it's an intriguing one. And for a debut, really can't ask for more than that, so check it out. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. If you'd like to like and subscribe, I'd be more than grateful. I got the poll up here, so for those few of you who actually heard this project, there's your chance to give me a rating, see what you guys overall thought of it. Beyond that, yes, year-end lists are coming up. We're working towards that. Anything I might be able to do to improve my presentation, I'm all ears. I gotta run really fast, that's why I'm talking quickly. Beyond that, if you guys want to see more of what my schedule looks like, the link over here is to my Patreon. 3 times a week, you get to vote. Once a week, higher level patrons get to add albums to my schedule, and that's how this record got featured today. More details are over there, but until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.